Hello, everybody. Welcome to Art Show. My name's Craig Stover. I'm the Executive Director for Allen's Lane Art Center. And today I have with me Barbara Straussberg. Thank you very much.
Thank you
for coming today. Before we begin, I just want to give a few notes about how we have set up, especially in this time of COVID. As you see, we're without masks, but we have many safety precautions in place. We have open windows, we have air filters, we have fans blowing on us. So we are perfectly safe from each other at a safe distance. And plus the vodka tonic also is it's a medicinal vodka tonic. It's okay, they know. I want to thank you for joining us this evening. I'm really excited to be talking to Barbara today.
Thank you.
I also want to thank those people who donated to attend this evening. We really appreciate it. And it helps to go support a great organization. So thank you very much. We really appreciate that. So Barbara, I'm just going to start at the beginning where I like to start, which is how did your life in the arts begin?
Good question. Well, I've always been interested in art, since I was, little. Always just playing with different materials, doing collage, crocheting, doing painting, drawing, whatever. And I was really lucky, which I'll probably say a lot tonight, but I was, art was encouraged in my household, and not just visual art, but all the arts, dance, theater. I have two sisters. They each majored, one majored in dance and one in theater, and I was the visual artist.
Okay.
So
were your parents in the arts at all?
Well, not exactly. My grandfather, who I was very close to, was a dentist by training. That was his profession. But he studied art. He just picked up, he went to a drawing class when he was actually 60, and he did art for 32 years. So he did mostly sculpture, but also figure drawing. And I hung out a lot with him, like in his little studio he set up in the basement. So, so that was a very close relationship, and we talked about art a lot, and I was lucky enough to inherit some of his really gorgeous art books.
So you grew up with his art in your house?
Yeah, it was.
And others? And,
yes. Well, I still have, and I have to say, really everyone in my family, we all have beautiful, like sculptures of his and some drawings. And so there's definitely an art legacy there. And then on my mother's side, her father was a concert pianist. Now, I totally did not get that gene. I don't know who did. No, really, I don't even know if it skipped over because I'm not sure it's in my, with my kids. But I do feel like just, the arts were there. And it was, what I really have to say is that, art was encouraged. It wasn't looked upon as something that you don't do. So it was really appreciated. It's still appreciated by my family. So I have to say that was a big influence.
So that was growing up, and then at what point did you say, you know what, the arts are for me? This is what I want to be when I grow up. Was that always assumed, or was there a breakthrough moment? How did that happen?
Well, I said, I want to be an artist. I actually said I wanted to be a weaver.
A
weaver, which I'm not, but I have sort of incorporated a lot of that into my work, actually more recently. But I did a lot of, so I always said, like, so in high school in particular, I took some really great art classes. I studied weaving in Greenwich Village. I went to a workshop. I apprenticed.
How bohemian.
I know, it was very, very cool. I was always going to New York, always. And so, and I went to Rhode Island School of Design, RISD. I did a summer, like a pre-college program. So, so I just, I guess I decided when I went to college that I wanted to study liberal arts. I'm not quite sure why I decided not to do art as a major, but I just felt because I was going to a really good school that I should do liberal arts. So I studied art history, which makes a lot of sense. Then after college, I decided, I was working in the nonprofit arts. Doing mostly fundraising, special events kind of things, but I was always taking art classes, and I decided at one point, I I can't just take classes. I have to go back to school and really devote my time to being an artist, learn how to be an artist.
Was this sort of right after
It
college?
was about,
no,
it was about 6 or 7 years.
Okay, so you had a little bit of time to think. Right.
Exactly.
And that whole time, were you in New York?
No, I was in Philly.
Oh, you came back to
Philly. Because I went to school at University of Pennsylvania for art history.
Oh, okay.
And then I stayed here and worked in the different some art schools and the Foundation for Architecture, different places.
Okay.
But I was always taking classes at night. And then I just said, you know, I don't really know how to do this. Like, how do you create a body of work? I just didn't have that self-discipline. So I decided, so I was able to take part-time day classes at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. And that's when.
And that really did it.
Oh yeah, I was like, oh, I have to go full time. I was like, there's no way you can do this part, you know. So I was hooked and I loved it.
So after PAFA, did you establish a studio after that?
Right. So I did the certificate program, which you know is the traditional program that they offered. I already had my bachelor's degree, so I went for the certificate, and so I actually, my last year at the academy, I got pregnant. It was, I mean, I wanted to, but I didn't know it would happen that quickly. And so so right after having my daughter, Hannah, I rented a studio within 5 or 6 months of having her. So I used to, you know, set up my pack and play, you know, where you put and I would do my work. So I was able to rent a studio like pretty much first thing, you know. I
assume that's not the current studio that you have.
No. But
where is your current studio?
So it's the Norristown Arts Building. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So I actually got there because once I moved out to right 5 minutes from here, right next to Chestnut Hill, to Winmore, I was looking for a studio. And I worked in my 3rd floor for about a year, and I was doing like a lot of little, you know, small work. And then I'm like, oh, you know, I need more space, you know. And so I found this really cool building in Norristown. I had no idea where Norristown was because I was coming from the city. And it's a building that's owned by an artist. And I thought it was just great. And I started working there. And I have been there ever since, which is amazing.
It's several years.
It's been like 23 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I had the privilege of actually seeing you at your studio, and I saw you. So it was a really nice setup, and there's quite a few people in there. It's a big building,
there are about
nice
24 artists.
Yeah. So there's a couple of those within Center City, but that's nice to see that it's in the suburbs, I guess you would call that. Of Philadelphia.
Yeah, it's sort of.
Still Philly.
Yeah, it's sort of feels more industrial kind of, because you're along the bike path.
Yeah. Is there like a community with the artists there?
Yes, there is.
Knows each other.
Yeah. Now it's a little quiet, but just because not as many people are coming in.
Right.
But I actually moved to a new studio. I don't know if I told you.
No.
Which was really exciting for me. I know. That means you have to come back.
That's true.
Which is really great because, as you know, I do like to work, you know, large scale and also an intimate scale. Yeah. But I am it was starting to become like just challenging, like, how do I move this? I have to move all of this so I can put this, you know. So this is really, it's just been very exciting for me.
Well, I look forward to seeing that.
I want you to come.
A bigger studio.
It is bigger. It's nice. And it's more of a square space and more windows, and it's fantastic.
I am stunned. I have the opportunity to go to many artist studios within Philadelphia, and I'm stunned about the stereotype that people have about most artists have these grand places with all these rooms and this. And most artists will take like a closet.
Oh, I know.
You know, or a basement or something else. So
I know. Well, I do have a little storage closet, which literally, if you open the door, it's like, oh, that's where everything is. Like this is kind of, but my working space, I try to keep sort of open as much as I can. Space. Yeah, no, that has all my own collection. My collection.
So you were in New York, but then you're back in Philly, and you've been a Philadelphia artist for decades, I would assume.
Yeah.
So the arts scene, you know, the sort of the bigger buyers, we are kind of wedged in between DC and New York, and then there's the fairs that happen in Miami and other places. And so Philadelphia, admittedly, doesn't have as many art collectors as, say, New York would have. So
different.
So
Yeah.
what makes you stay in Philadelphia? Or are you happy
Well,
here? I mean, is
I
it that
am.
vibrant for
I am.
the circle?
I think for the kind of work I do, I don't know if there are as many opportunities, but I think the art world is changing in terms of how you show.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of more pop-up exhibits,
Yeah.
they're temporary. There's still some galleries, but as you know, a lot of galleries have just closed in the city. I think I would like to show more outside of Philadelphia, in addition, I'll say. I just feel like sort of I'm ready, like to sort of branch out a little bit.
Well,
but
your work is, I think, fantastic, and I think
thank you.
that you would do well in many different locations. I think what I'm trying to get at is
why
now that with the internet and with the pandemic, you know, artists don't necessarily have to be in the hottest spot anymore to survive. And Philadelphia's wonderful. You can get these gigantic spaces, and it's great community.
Well, my space is not gigantic. I won't exaggerate.
Right.
I'm not going to exaggerate. It's just a little bigger than what I had. But I mean, it's true. I feel like you can really work almost anywhere. But there is something to like a routine when you do your work and having that space that you go to. I really do enjoy getting out of Philadelphia. I've done a couple of residencies. I know some of your other artists that you've spoken to here have talked about their residencies and what it's done for them. And that proved to be really important to my work. I mean, people would say that, like, oh, just wait till you go on your residency. It's going to change your work. And I'm like, oh, come on, please. I'm a painter. I've been a painter, but that it's really nice to get out of your environment. I mean, it really stimulates a lot of just imagery and change, and you're around artists, other artists.
Well, I want to pick up on something that you just said. You talked to yourself and referred to yourself as a painter.
Yes.
But I think it's not a but. A lot of people know you for your paper works or your works on paper. So I think the general public out there wouldn't necessarily describe you as a painter. So it's refreshing to hear that you are. I see you
well,
that
that's
way.
funny because that's what I always say. I say I'm a painter out of habit. But what I'm trying to say is that I'm a painter and a paper artist. So it's more like I'm adding this paperwork that I do, which is called Junchi, which I'll talk about. But that is a dilemma, I have to say, because you've hit on something here, because you sort of see yourself a certain way. And I've always been very dedicated to doing painting. Like, I want to be a really good painter. And, there are a lot of artists out there, doing all sorts of stuff. And I'm like, okay, I just, if I want to stick with this, I want to do it well. Now, when I say painting that I do, I do printmaking, I draw, collage, now the fiber element, so it's not just straight ahead painting. But I am sort of trying to negotiate, I guess you'd say, do I identify as a painter or am I a paper artist? And that kind of only comes up when, I guess if you're, submitting to something or you want to present your work to someone new, I'm like, well, are my paintings really strong from this group or is it the Junchi, the paperwork? So I do feel like that's just kind of a new little dilemma, but it's not the worst thing in the world. It's all good. So I feel I can do both. Like, I think you can do it all, and I just want to be good at what I do, I guess.
Well, I see
dedicated.
I do see you as a painter, but I think that the term painter now doesn't necessarily mean you just use paint. I see you as an artist that started maybe with paint and you've developed a vocabulary of marks. I always like to think of it that way. And you've increased that vocabulary because I do see you using marks the way that paint would react to paper is a specific mark. And it's different on canvas. And sometimes the paper itself has its own mark without any paint required. And I see you blending those together. I think that's your strong suit, is that you're able to have a wider toolbox to work within. I've always felt artists are strongest when they really can use the lessons of one with different techniques and different styles, but to claw all that together.
Yeah, so well, I've always painted on paper, and on wood and canvas. Now I'm actually painting on linen because I really like it. It reminds
What is it
me
about paper, though, that attracts you so much? Because
Well,
I saw a lot of paperworks in your studio.
I do have a lot of paperwork.
So what is it? Is it just that it's easy to work with, or is it something else?
I do think, I think the surface, I mean, it's a different surface, but there's a certain like immediacy to it. I think when you attack a painting, you're thinking, oh my God, like I'm investing so much in this painting, you know, and it takes a lot of time and effort. Sometimes the works on paper are just freer and they're not as, they don't feel as major of an investment, but it also allows you to work through a bunch at a time, you know, you do multiples. So you get somewhere, and then sometimes when you're just, you know, stuck in a painting, you go back and forth. So then you do the paperwork and go, oh, well, of course, this is how I'm going. This is going to translate into this.
Have you always used, for lack of a better term, non-traditional materials? Because I'd be curious about your history, because I did see some things in your studio where you started working, you were shaping some paper there. I think there were some wire things that you were working on, a few other things. Have you always experimented, I guess?
Well, I'm doing more of that because I think you sort of have to give yourself permission to do some other things, which is what, when I was just briefly talking about the residencies, what happened was my first one that I went on, I was there for a month, and I'm like, oh my God, I can stay here till midnight, 1 in the morning, you know, and I was just painting furiously. Oh my God. So I had like, you know, 5-foot paintings on the wall. I had, you know, just tons of works on paper. And after 3 weeks, I was like, oh my God, like now what? Like I was kind of tired, you know, it was enervating, you know? So I was looking around me. There were a lot of artists experimenting with different materials. And I was like, wow, well, maybe I should just start taking those paper, they were drawings, they weren't paper pieces like this, you know, drawings, I mean, paintings on paper. And I'll just start ripping them up. I'll start making some little sculptures. And that's when I sort of transitioned a little bit and just gave myself, you know, permission to do something different. So, which then led to some of this, which I can get into. I can sort of segue if you want, but anyhow.
Let me ask you about your process. I'm always fascinated by the way that artists actually, not the materials. So what I'm getting at is just your ideas. So I've met some artists where it's a brainstorm, they get it when they're out in the rain and they're walking or something, and then they come home and, oh, I got to do this. And I know there are other artists that will build up and they'll experiment over time. So where do you find yourself?
I'm definitely not the big idea person. No, I mean, I'm not too. Well, really how I work is that I feel like I sort of absorb, you know, what's around me. It's not intentional. I will see things. And I think artists really see things very differently. And I will take from that. I almost feel like I'm like an interpreter, translator person, you know, like I'm taking what I see around me, what I feel, what's affecting me, and then that translates into my own language, which is a visual language.
Is the process the same each time, or do you
I think it is. I mean, I think I'm a like hardcore abstract artist, painter / paper artist. I think that's how I think. Sometimes I wish I could be more object oriented. Like I wish I could be a portrait painter, because then I could really, I think that's fascinating that somebody can, you know, capture someone's essence in a portrait, but that's just not me, you know? And I don't like having like a preconceived idea. I think I really think that art is more about like having fun and taking chances. Like I think that if you get really sort of caught up in that object, then it sort of stifles me, I guess. But you just have to know yourself and how you like to work. You know.
Do you have, when you do work, do you find that you have rituals? Do you have to have, you know, like this light on, and I need to have, you know, my cup of tea and NPR and something? Is that?
Well, you're going to laugh, but I usually need to eat something.
That's good.
I usually walk in my seat, I'm like, wow, this is going to take so much energy. I'm going to eat something. Okay. I got to eat. So I usually come to
my... So you gas up first?
Yes.
Okay.
Doesn't matter what time of day.
Okay.
I'm like,
doesn't matter what you eat?
Well,
is it a deconstructed sandwich? That's what I want to know for the abstract works.
It's very artistic.
Right.
What I'm eating is beautiful. But it's, I do like just sort of I walk in, I'm like, wow, like, this is going to take a lot of energy. Okay. And I think it does take a lot of energy to do my work, you know. So usually I do eat a little something. I always have music on. Okay. I try not to listen to the radio these days.
Most artists I find do have some distraction in the
background. Oh, I love having music. Yeah.
Can you work with somebody else in the studio?
I don't think I really, I don't know. Like, I've taken, since I've been doing this paperwork, I actually started getting into it through printmaking.
Okay.
So I was, after not being in a class with people, for the last couple of years, I've been in a printmaking class. And that's different. I had to get a little used to it, but I seem to have adjusted because I'm very chatty with everybody, and you know, so, but I'm not really used to, you know, I think as an artist, you're really, well, at least the kind of work I do, I'm used to being by myself, but,
so you know. I guess the big question I keep thinking about is like, if you're working on a bigger picture, would it require like 2 sandwiches?
I thought you were going to ask me something really serious.
No, not me.
That's really funny. Well, it doesn't matter. Everything requires 2 sandwiches,
right.
No. Or a sandwich and a yogurt, I'll say.
Yeah, I smell titles, and
I know. I do a lot of food titles, actually. Yeah.
Really?
Well, you know, I sort of, I don't know, something.
That's great.
I don't know. Not really, but.
Tell me about the planning stages, because, you know, you talked about, I've seen you work in series.
Yes.
Like so that's, I know that you are already thinking about that when you're approaching something. So like, how much planning do you do with that? So I guess what I'm getting at is I saw in your studio, you had these very long pieces, and I think there were like 4 or 5 of them. Do you approach it knowing that you're going to make that many?
Oh, you mean the paper scrolls?
Yes. Yeah.
No, I don't know how many I'm going to make. You know, sometimes I like the idea of having a nice grouping, 3, 5, you know, that kind of thing.
Right.
But yeah, I've done about 5 of those, and then this is a different shape, like this is a different size. They take a lot of work, the large pieces. So I will work on that over time, but I do not preconceive of how many I'm going to do of something. I think that's also just part of that. Does this require, like, am I really into this? Do I want to do more? Do I want to change the format? You know, so, but it's always nice to have a grouping, I'll say. But it's not predetermined how big that group will be. Okay.
But even your groupings, though, you do put a lot of rules ahead of yourself to begin with about, say, dimensions and palette. And so I don't see, like, you don't have like 4 black pieces and then one's a hot pink or something. So I see that.
The connection.
Yeah, the connection.
It's, yeah, I think that happens naturally. I think when you're working, like after a show, all of a sudden you're like, okay, like I'm going to start with some new, and it might be a different palette,
right? Might
be sort of a little different concept that you've carried over.
Is there a, can you tell me, this might be almost impossible to answer, but is there a difference between the works that you currently make now and the way that you approach them as opposed to when you first started making artwork?
That's a really good question. I didn't expect that.
Curveball.
Yeah, that's a curveball.
Do you think your processes are the same, or have you become looser or tighter?
Well, I've always been loose, so I don't think that's so much an issue. I think more confident, so I can move through things without as much. As an artist, you always analyze your work, but I think I can do things more confidently. So I can spend more time looking, and then you know, it's not as much a struggle in terms of the composition, and I don't get caught up in that as much because that comes more naturally. But in terms of how I approach it, I mean, in terms of what I, you know, you walk in, you say, you know, what am I working on today? I guess that just depends on what's really, you know, going well, I guess, you know, what you're feeling at that moment. Sometimes I find the paperwork, like I said, kind of calming and a little easier to do in between painting. So I think, I guess in terms of, to try to answer your question, which I don't think I am really doing,
That's okay.
but I do think that my approach is somewhat similar, but with more confidence.
Right.
And I have probably a little better idea of what I'm doing. You know, like if I'm going to spend the time to stretch a 5-foot canvas, you know, then I want to do 3 of them. You know, like you know, it's the size I want. I'm not going to waste my time, money, you know, so that kind of thing. But, you know, it's always hard to decide what to do. You know, when you walk in, it's like, well, I'm really excited about this, but, you know, this, I'm kind of into this. So it's.
Well, tell me about your inspiration, and in particular, are there other, aside from nature, which I found is a constant for a lot of artists.
Yeah, I'd say nature is really important.
Is a big one. Are there other artists that you look at for inspiration?
Yeah, I love.
Who do you?
Yeah, I've had. So I was just sort of thinking, like, what books do I have open right now, right? So in terms of.
So who are they? Who's your top 3?
Who's my secret? Top 3.
Or who are you looking at now?
I'm in trouble. I really like Joan Snyder. I like Susan Rothenberg, Joan Mitchell.
She just passed,
Yeah.
Joan Mitchell.
Cy Twombly has really grown on me, I have to say. You know, at first I was a little.
Crack, but once you get into him, it's like...
I think he's great. Not as into, like, you know, when I grew up, I was looking at the Expressionists. So you know, I can appreciate some of that, but I don't look at that, except for Helen Frankenthaler, I really like. And now I have this new person, Lenore Tawney, and she's a fiber artist. So I'm trying to expand a little bit away from my so-called, you know, traditional abstract painters. So. Is
your house filled with just your work, or do you have other?
No, I have a lot of people's work.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, artist friends. Like I said, you know, my grandfather's work.
Right. But you have other friends, other artists, studios from the studio that you're with, or just from all over?
A mix, a mix.
Some pieces that you just had to have.
Yeah, I wish I could do more exchange.
Do you do trades? Yeah.
I wish I could do more. I don't know why I haven't done a lot.
You should do more.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
We'll talk about that
afterwards.
Right? All right. I have a great collection too.
I have to look at your work.
So about your work, you know, sometimes people are hesitant to approach artists, or they're not sure. They wait for the gallery shows. Do you do commission work?
I usually don't. I really haven't done a commission. And I think mostly because I always seem to have work in my studio that is available.
Right. Okay.
So when being considered for something, it will be, you know, why don't you know, look at this. Why don't you take this one? Because, so that really hasn't come up. I usually have a decent selection, I would say, you know, different sizes, different works. Yeah. So, and I don't know how well I would do with a commission.
I think you would do great.
Really? I'm not really.
If you find the right person for it.
Yeah. I usually have something, I guess, like I said, I usually have something, you know, enough to show, you know, people.
Well, I will admit your studio was, you know, had a few items in it.
A few. Just a few. Oh, yeah, just a few.
Well, before we continue, I want to remind everybody that we will be taking questions. So on your screen, you should see a little chat button. And if you click on that, you're able to send questions to us. So just click on the chat button, and then it gives you a selection. You're going to be sending your questions to the host. You also have the ability to send each other questions as well if you don't know. So you can chat amongst yourselves, but we're going to do a few more questions, and then we'll be taking questions from you all. So hopefully you have some really great questions. Also, before I continue, a quick little promo. Barbara is going to be teaching a workshop with us November 14th, 1 p.m. It's on a Saturday. at 1 o'clock. It's an abstract painting and the paper art of Junchi.
Yes.
So you can go on our website and register for that class. So I look forward to it. So let's talk about the process.
Yes.
Junchi.
I'd love to talk about it.
When did you get into this?
So after that first residency I mentioned, where I started taking the sort of trying to play with paper off the wall kind of thing, a little more dimensional. When I came home, a friend of mine, her name is Rona Richter. She is an artist and a printmaking teacher. Mm-hmm. And she said to me, Barbara, I really think you would like my class. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, well, I really want to make paper. I want to do paper. And she's like, well, you're not going to actually make paper, but you'll do printmaking, which I always love. And then something called Junchi, which I really think you'll enjoy, which is actually manipulating paper. So what you do is you take handmade paper. It's called hanji, which is from Korea. Beautiful, made from the mulberry bark. And you can do a lot. You can actually print on it first, which is what I do in the class. I do photographic prints. So they're called paper lithographs. And you can incorporate that into what you do is you're layering the paper, and then you're either rolling it or working it with your hands while it's wet. And what it turns out to be is you're creating actually one sheet of paper, one piece out of multiple pieces. And this is an ancient Korean technique.
So the different colors could act like an undercolor, so it gives you a fresh new color on top.
Yeah. So it kind of feels like I'm painting.
It is a painterly process.
But then I have that little fiber thing happening, which is like kind of feeling like I'm hearkening back to that like high school thing that I always said I wanted to do, be a fiber artist. So it's very exciting. And then I'm trying to go more dimensional with it.
Okay.
So
well, that leads me into my next question.
Oh, I knew that was going to be a segue.
What did you bring us today?
So this is a new piece, I'll say.
And this is a Junchi.
This is Junchi, yeah. Okay. So, and it's a very labor-intensive process. So you can really kind of decide once the fibers have binded together, you can decide how far to go with it. Now, I know it's a little hard for everyone to see detail here, but what happens is you can do really almost anything with it, but I have like prints in here. I actually have some family member print. Now I'm getting into a little bit with prints, taking antique photos and printing them, and I sort of embed them, hide them in the work. There's paint in here.
Love the hidden stuff.
Yeah, the hidden stuff is fun. And you can really hide it, or you can make it, in the forefront. But, but the gold here, that's paint. So and I wasn't taught this. This is like, I took the process, which is a very traditional process, a 500-year-old technique. Right. And I contemporized it. So I said, this is how I want to do it. And honestly, I probably am not the most, I probably skip some steps, because I'm doing it kind of the way I interpret it, right? Yeah. So, in fact, I would like to say that the other person who I studied with to learn the technique is Chiang Chung, and she is the person who brought this back taught it to Westerners. Okay. Yeah. Nice. So she was also a painter, and she does beautiful work.
I love the processes that you're able to get. So what I'm drawn to is the fact that you can have, with these marks, you have these hard edges that you have, like where it's sort of cut through. So that is like, you have these prominent shapes, but then you have these bleeds that happen. Yeah. And then because it's dimensional, you also have these cast shadows. So the colors, you have these bold colors, and then you have shadowed colors. So it does have a lot of marks that you couldn't get from just making a painting.
Interesting.
And I really enjoy that about your work.
Oh,
to me, it does look like a painting. I mean,
it feels very painterly. I say I approach it from a painterly background. But I keep saying, I want to make paper sculpture. It's like, I've taken these little baby steps, know. So I was doing those, which you exhibited here, a beautiful, just scroll. I call it a scroll, like it hangs and you put it in front of the window and the light And when you see light coming through, it's really, you know, you see all the lacy structures and the beautiful handmade paper. But now I'm like, you know, this could be, I didn't realize that you could take something and just this paper and dry it over a form and it can dry like this. And then this could be something different tomorrow. If I decide I'm not really happy with that, so don't get too attached, then it could transform into something else. So I really do I feel like I'm on to a little bit of a new direction.
Do you title these?
I haven't yet.
Okay.
I did for all the Junchi work, I've done it I do titles as a series. So I might say, you know, Junchi, large trees, the scrolls, I was calling scroll, you know, just the really large, because they read to me like scrolls, you know, so.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So do we have any questions, Mark? Okay.
No questions yet? Okay.
They're coming. So is this the most recent thing to come out of your studio?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't decide what to bring.
Is it wet? Is it?
No, it's dry. No, it dries really quickly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is this the first of something, or are you?
Well, I have a couple of these that I formed into this kind of shape. Okay. Kind of a fan-like. I do kind of dream of making this very large skirt. I'm sort of thinking about clothing because of what this was used. It actually still is. It's made as clothing and as accessories, as a functional pieces, the Junchi.
That sounds great.
So yeah, so I don't know, I just have this sort of ideas, which, as I said before, I'm not really conceptually oriented, but I feel like it sort of is calling to be something wearable or, you know.
So you mentioned the fact that this might not look like this later. So I'm curious, do you find yourself reworking your work all the time?
Yes,
or
all the time. Okay. All the time.
Do you destroy work? Or
I have some.
You always find a way to reincorporate.
Mostly I rework them. Yeah. But sometimes I'm like, I'm done. This is it. I can't, you know.
Do you rework older work, or is it just
Yes, I've done a lot, or you regesso over a painting.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, right now I'm doing some paintings like, well, I had one here in the show, which was a linen piece where I painted on linen. So I left it raw, the raw linen. Right. And I just used a clear gesso, but that I just, that's kind of a new work too, so in that direction.
When you're in your studio currently, you're working on multiple things. You're doing a painting, you're doing some printmaking, you're doing... So you're always busy.
I'm always busy. Yeah.
I've
been very involved in the last couple of months, since moving to the new studio, and it's been great, you know. So yeah, that's been a big help.
First question, or maybe only question. We'll say right faster.
She's getting there.
Do you put a protective coat on your Junchi pieces when they're finished?
I don't, but there are you know, coats, material that you can put on. They're different materials, and I haven't really researched that yet. Okay. Yeah, I'm thinking about it, because you can actually seal it for outdoors, or if they get wet, so that you can protect them. Right. So no, I haven't done that yet.
Well, I would imagine a piece like this, I mean, you have the option of hanging it like this. Would it bother you if somebody were to frame this piece out? Because then you could do it with a UV coating glass or something.
Well, some of the ones that are, all the ones that I've done really up to this point are more flat, like more like a 2D. So, and some of them have been framed. Okay. Yes, and some people will really, if they're going to buy a piece, will want it framed. But, you know, I think this will be sensitive to some light, but I think that's the natural part of it, that it has a natural change. What kind of inks
are you using as easy?
Well, the inks are what I put on, the paint that I put on is acrylic. Okay. So it's a water-based acrylic. But the actual papers are made in Korea. Oh, okay. So they're hand dyed in Korea. Yeah. Yeah, they're beautiful papers. So
we're going to take another question, but before we do that, I just want to encourage everybody, if you haven't already, please go to Barbara's website. We know that this venue is tough to see the detail on this, but I'm always encouraging people, go to Barbara's website, check it out. She has lots of beautiful things on the website. And then take the next step, which is actually to reach out to Barbara and arrange for a studio visit and go see her work and go talk to her.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That's really what Philadelphia is all about. You know, really
very
reaching
easy.
out to all these
very easy.
artists. So,
and artists do love to do that.
Yeah,
you know,
it's wonderful. So please do that. One more question. I'm interested in your starting point with an internal idea through or memory. Is that right? Okay. I'm interested in your starting point with a starting point.
Hi, it's Liz.
Is it memory?
Is it memory?
Okay. Right.
You
Is it
start with an
internal idea or through memory?
There we go.
I think it's more, it's not, I don't know if I would call it memory. I think it's more experience, like how you experience.
Probably more like a muscle memory.
It's more of a, in terms of like starting or how I actually start it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think as I'm aware that I think most artists do this, we sort of have, I don't know if it's sort of something automatic that like you have a certain movement you like to do or gesture or mark, what you were talking about. So I do notice like, oh, I'm going to just start with that. I'm not really thinking, you know, so it's really just more
like an
automatic, more spontaneous. But I do notice there is some kind of pattern. I don't know if anyone else would really see it, but you would see throughout my work some of those lines that are, you know, oh, that's Barbara, you know? So I do sort of do. So I guess it's sort of an intuitive, but almost automatic where I would start.
People are often fascinated with how artists start.
Or how, how do you, right?
The best story I ever heard was actually de Kooning, and apparently his story was he would take a canvas and he would make a mark on it just so it was ruined from the white, and then he could fix it. So I can understand. You need that jump start. You know? So.
Or sometimes like, because I sort of just so very imperfectly, which is that coating that you put on the fabric, on the cotton or the linen. And I'll see something really subtle in there. I'll go like, oh, I sort of like that little thing. So I kind of just start making marks. And I usually do start with pencil material.
Yeah, something.
Yeah.
We have time for one more question.
Oh, that's all?
Well, you
this
know,
is fun. I'm managing
we could do this all night, right?
I'm managing to talk, right?
Can you speak to the physical paperwork as compared to painting?
Oh, interesting. This paperwork versus painting. Well, as we were saying before, I think there are a lot of similarities. I think the difference is that you're actually manipulating this material. You know, paper. It's physical. I mean, I think of painting as being very physical, but until I did this is very physical because you literally you're actually really rolling in bubble wrap. You're rolling it. So well, that's how I do it. You can also do it with your hands, but so it's a very physical, tactile, and that's where it's sort of like, I think more like a sort of in that, I want to say fine craft category, because it's really manipulating it physically, the material. So that may be a difference. I see them very connected, as we were discussing before, but this is approaching more of that three-dimensional. So that's thinking a little differently than you would if you were approaching a two-dimensional painting.
Well, I got to say, I am eager to come to the new studio.
Oh, good. You'll be my first guest.
Oh, great. And I guess I want to see, you know, how many sandwiches you're going to offer me. And I want to see if this is still intact.
Sandwiches. It's usually a scone.
Okay, I'll take that. And I want to see, you know, does this survive? I think that's fantask. But I want to thank you for coming by today.
Thank you. That went by so quickly. I could keep talking. And, don't we have more time?
Again.
Thank you for your questions. They were really great.
Please go to Barbara's website. It's Straussberg.com.
just barbarastraussberg.com.
barbarastraussberg.com.
Yeah, and it's on your website.
There's a
where you can
connection right
link.
there.
Yeah.
And thank you for tuning in to Art Show. We have an artist each and every Thursday night at 7. And thank you again to those people who made donations to the center. We really appreciate it. So thank you very much and have a nice night.